I'm down.
First of all, my first question out of the gate, Nick, is like, can you slow down a little bit? Like, it seems like you got a little bit going on with the empire you're building over there. Can you just like pump the brakes a little bit, or what's going on?
Dude, I wish, man. I wish. And it's funny because like you get to a point to where you're like, oh, like you get over this cusp of just fighting uphill every time and hitting roadblocks and speed bumps and dead ends and and you're pivoting and you get to like the spot where you're like, dude, this is the one. And you're just like, and now let's step on the gas. Right. And uh, I'm 34. I feel like I got some gas left in the tank.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
but think about this. My counterpart is a former Navy SEAL, father of three, and I mean he inspires me to just go 100% every day. And I'm a veteran myself, combat vet myself. So
Yeah.
we have this like he looks at me like, man, Nick just doesn't fucking stop. And I excuse my language, but I look at him and I'm like, dude, this fucking Navy SEAL, man. Like, you come on, like, just push through it, baby. So yeah, that's
Wait,
kind
so
of where we're at.
what's your background in terms of military service? What branch
Yeah,
were you?
so I was in the Air Force. I went
Okay.
active duty, enlisted, joined right when I was 18 out of high school. I grew up in a small 5,000 person logging community about an hour southeast of Seattle called
Okay.
Buckley, Washington.
Okay.
And yeah, I grew up with no, single wide trailer, grew up with no college fund. Parents never went to college. And I just was like, I need to get the out of here, And first I was like, well, shit, if I go to the military, do 4 years, they'll pay for school. Right. And I was like, maybe I'll learn a little bit of like, discipline and how to harness that energy that can be distracting for a young man.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I joined the military after high school. And then back in 2007, 2009, I volunteered with the Army to go do combat missions in Baghdad, Iraq, as part of the police transition team when they took Saddam out. And I was a
Mhm.
50 cal gunner on top of a Humvee for about 250 combat missions when I was about 20 years old. Uh, and I was like my, kind of big boy job, I
Yeah.
guess. And then I
There you
got
go.
out when I got out. I just did 4 years. Got out at age 22 in 2011, and did the college stuff. And here we are.
Hearing of your background, like where you grew up, what was that like near Tacoma, kind of?
So if you're in Tacoma, you go 30 minutes
Right.
east, right? You know where like Mount Rainier is and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Enumclaw.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Enumclaw used to be known for this fucking horse debacle. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Mm.
Some dude had an altercation with the horse. Anyway, so that was out of Enumclaw. That ain't this. But yeah, so I grew up at about the base of Mount Rainier, a
Yeah,
little
right.
logging community.
I
Everyone
had
had
a
trucks.
I had a gig a few years ago now, a documentary I did in Gig Harbor, so that's how I know anything about
Yes,
that area. But you know,
beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful
it
spot.
totally is. But hearing like that, like I suspected that we would probably connect quickly and easily, and not just because we're both bald, bearded, handsome men,
Let's
but
go, baby.
but I also grew up in a really small town. I mean, 9,000, so like it just dwarfs your town. And a lot of the things you just said about your upbringing, family, I'm already resonating with. So
I
I
appreciate
feel you on
that.
that. I was the first one to go to college in my family as well. I'm from a rural, town in eastern North Carolina, kind of like fishing and farming community. So and some logging too in North Carolina there as well.
What part
So
of do you know
I'm
Greenville, North Carolina?
buddy. I'm from Little Washington. It's
Let's
20
go,
minutes east of Green.
dude. So I used to spend a week a month in Greenville, North Carolina, when I was running day to day on Mr. Beast's account. Dude,
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
No, I got you.
I just spent some time out there, man. It's beautiful, but
Yeah,
yeah,
we're all proud of Mr. Beast around there, man. But
yeah,
Greenville, dude, I grew up going to Greenville like in high school. Getting into bars when I shouldn't have been and that sort of stuff.
yeah.
Greenville's an interesting little town.
It is. You like and their sports teams crush it. I think like their baseball team was in the playoffs and like they're
Baseball's been good, yeah,
yeah. I love baseball, man. But yeah, I'd spent
and their
quite
football
a
team too.
few yeah, quite a few times in Greenville. So shout out to the Pirates, man.
Yeah, right
So
on. All right, well, we could go off on that forever. Let's try
yeah.
to stay focused and not just me and you hang out publicly.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I have a lot of different questions, but let's give a
Yeah.
little bit of background in terms of like after your service. Man, I really could spend a lot of time talking about that too. But after your service, what led you to the entertainment industry? Let's at least fill that
Hundred
gap in.
percent, 100%, 100%. So I use GI Bill, go to undergrad, and I was in a position where I was in college, and I was like, well, what the hell do you do with the bachelor's degree, right? And I'm just like, I ain't a science guy, I ain't a math guy. I'm like, I like to argue, and I was like, law. I was like, what about a law as a lawyer? And I was like, well, I ain't paying. So, let's just see. So, so I did pre-law in undergrad. And then I got into law school and used the GI Bill for undergrad and for law school. So I had no student debt. So I was in my first or second year of law school, and everyone's like, man, what kind of lawyer do you want to be? You're like, oh, it's criminal, civil, you're going to be a litigator, you're going to be, you're going to be a trial attorney. And panels, because I always think you should just run like, you should be intellectually, no matter what. You like to draw, you like to paint, you like to create, whatever. And so there's a panel for IP attorneys, and one was a guy named Sia. And I later took a course with him, but he was a 20-year business affairs executive at HBO back in the day, and then happened to move out and be an adjunct professor. And I sat, and after the panel, I was like, hey man, my name's Nick Witters. Nice to meet you. I'm like, what is there's like a entertainment lawyer? He's like, yeah, so we had coffee and talked to him all about the business, and I was hooked. I was like, all right, the subject matter of entertainment's interesting with the skill set of being an attorney. All right, well, I was like, how do you get to do that? It's some little country boy from Washington. He's like, all right, you got to get to LA to a talent agency. I was like, talent agency? What's that? It's so stupid, man. And he's just like, well, you got to do it. It's like there's, no offense, there's a ton of nepotism in Hollywood. It's no joke. It's who we know this in business. But in Hollywood, it's like, oh, kids are producing, dad's a producer, mom's a casting a director. I went to USC Film School, like, and had never been to California in my life other than maybe once as a young boy. And so I was like, all right. So I start like deconstructing how I want to do it. So I was like, all right, I got to get to LA, but how about I get to soon? Because he's like, you got to. And I was like, well, I have another year of law school. So I called the dean of the law school up. I was like, I want to do my last year at a law school in LA. She's like, we've never done that. Normally you transfer your second year, not your third year. And I was like, okay, but can I do it? She's like, well, technically, yes, but you'd have to like pull the course load in law school, and I'd have to take evidence and it's at the same time. When normally you go through evidence for 3.5 months and then you go into advanced evidence. So I'd learn a rule of law and then I'd have to apply it in actual practice. It was the gnarliest shit I've ever done. Long story short, she's like, if you do that, we'll allow you to transfer. You have enough home credit to have it from SU, Seattle U, but you'll be able to go and transfer. They also got to accept you. So I was like, fuck it. So I go Pepperdine and Loyola Law School in LA, and I got accepted, and I just packed my bags. I moved that summer, didn't know anybody in LA, and just moved out there. It was like, all right, we're doing this. And that's how like I started that journey into entertainment, actually curious and just not being afraid to ask questions of people that just, this professor who was a business affairs lawyer, and I was like, talk to me about this, man. I just bought him coffee and kind of spearheaded the whole rest of my career.
How much did your background in the military and just your training and any changing of perspective that brought along with it, how much did that influence like just the way you move in the world, the way you move in business, the way you move in the entertainment industry? Do you bring that with you? Is that something you can put your finger on?
I would say absolutely, right? Like
Okay.
when you're a young man, you go into, or young human, you go into the military, you probably don't have the discipline yet. You probably don't have yet. And it creates a different type of human, sometimes good, sometimes bad. There's a lot of risk associated with going to the military. You could die, it happens. Um, yeah, I would say what it played in my career was like the ability to adapt and overcome. So when you're going through training, you're getting
Yeah.
your ass kicked, you're nosing in the dirt, you're getting stepped on. It's adapt and overcome, right? So you're going into these situations and being the most prepared physically, mentally, strategically, whatever. And you're put in these environments that are ever changing. So you have to get put into an environment, you have to assess your surroundings, and you have to make strategic gut decisions, like instant gut decisions, not, hey, let me think on this for like another 3 months and like weigh every outcome. And no, you got calculated decisions, and you can't be afraid to fail. Because if you go into something being afraid to fail, I'm going to talk about a military term. You ain't going to pull the trigger when you need to.
Yeah.
And that has the trigger in life, in decision making, not ignorantly. You want to make calculated judgments, but like, yeah, I would say it played every part of my life moving forward from when I got out of the military, of being able to pivot, being able to like adapt and overcome from failure, from losses. And yeah, and it's both hurt me and saved me in my young days and my early career till now, and that's how we've essentially built our business together, John and I, of just being as smart and calculated as we can with understanding where we are and then having the ability to just pull the trigger.
Are you familiar with Stephen Pressfield, the author who wrote Gates of Fire?
It sounds familiar,
He's,
to be
he's
honest.
written a lot of like military historical fiction, like Gates of Fire was his bestseller. But he's also written a lot of nonfiction, like the War of Art, play on the art of war, right? And
Interesting.
his approach, you would really dig his stuff if you have it, and you may already know him, just may not recognize the name, but.
Yeah.
I mean, his approach to art, to writing, in his case, is with the same mindset of like it's not this like woo woo art that you have to conjure up, a perfect setting for. It's work, right? It's discipline.
Yeah.
It's sitting down and doing
Yes.
the damn work. And so he brings that military like ethos, if you will, to his work, and it's really powerful. I'll send you some of
That's
his
cool.
stuff. But I had him on the show, and I was talking to him. You reminded me of this when we first started talking about like when you grind and grind and you're climbing, you start to get that plateau and you start to get that momentum. And I told him this story, and he had never heard of this before. But I used to box just for a little while, a few years back when I was younger.
Yeah.
And my trainer told me is like you kind of have two different types of people. You got one that when they do a little
Yeah.
damage, they sit back on their laurels and they say, "Oh, I can
Yeah.
catch my breath right now." And you
Yeah.
have the other type of person who like sees the blood, smells the blood in the water, whatever metaphor you want to use, and goes in
Mhm.
for the kill, right? And
Yes.
that's what you reminded me of, and I had said that previous on a podcast of when you start to finally get that momentum after all this work, it
Yes.
can be easy to be like, oh my God, like, isn't this great? We're doing it. But that's the time when you throttle down.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I got
God,
excited.
it's fucking beautiful. We love excitement in this house, man.
Good, good, good.
Dude, everything is predicated on on momentum, right?
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard to get it going, and it's such a normal human reaction. It's to lay off the gas and like smell the rose, like, right, get complacent, get in that kind of human mindset of laziness that's just traditionally in our DNA. But
Mm-hmm.
like, you got to be aggressive.
Yeah. And even
Yeah,
if it's just to catch your breath, like that makes sense. I
yeah,
get why, but but
totally.
that's the time, that's the time
Yeah,
when you go in. So it seems to me that you and John, like your collaboration is really a big part of, and you've kind of already alluded to this,
yeah.
a big part of what's generating that inertia, that momentum. So bring me back to the beginning of that relationship.
Yeah. So, God, man, it's there's like life is so interesting when you think of all
Ain't it?
the loss, the L's, right? Every L, right? Everyone's like, everyone happens for a reason. One door closes, one door opens. Like it is so annoyingly true
I know.
that like you sit in something that you just like you were just so dead set that was the move, and it completely evaporates, and you're just like, well, all right, a lot of people can't handle that L. if it's big enough, right? And it's painful, but you gotta just step up, dust yourself off, assess, adapt, and overcome, right? And so when I had gotten fired, be straight up, I got fired at William Morris right before COVID, right? Little personal stuff. My mom passed away about 6 years ago, but she had passed away about so when I moved to LA.
Mm-hmm.
My that was in August 2016. December 2016, my uncle got hit by a car, passed away, which was her brother. And then a month after that, January 20th in 2017, so a month later, my mom got sick with the flu and passed away.
Damn.
And and I was in my last year of law school. I just moved to LA. I was destroyed. My mom was the closest human being. She was a single mom. She raised us. Like she's just so that that triggered a lot of my bad habits of like being in the military. Guess what? When you get stressed, you drink and all this stuff. So long story short, and then when you're in Hollywood, everything's get drinks. Here, and it just got to be a ton. And I had developed a bad habit of drinking. I do not drink anymore. I had stopped drinking when I had immediately gotten fired. And I was like, this is the moment to either get defined by this or go and define yourself. Right. So I got fired at William Morris, and I thought like I was going to be an agent for life. Like that was my thing. And I was like, well, that ain't going to be it right now. So ironically enough, I had failed the bar the first time. So during COVID, I studied for the bar, retook the bar and passed it. And then I got back into Washington, started reassessing what I want to do. I was so inspired by being a talent representative. And I was like, well, there's managers and all this stuff. So anyways, a buddy of mine who I was in the mailroom with calls me up. This was back 2021, right? He's like, hey, dude, I work for this management company. It's a bunch of YouTubers, and they manage Mr. Beast. I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what a Mr. Beast is. My YouTube experience was like, get on the news, watch news clips, and like get it. How do I change a starter in my truck? Like that was my right. But like I said, be a student and just have a passion for learning, and you'll figure it out. So like I worked for a guy named Brant Joel. He's like my closest mentor. He was the head of the talent department at William Morris when I worked there. He had Justin Timberlake and Jason Momoa. And just seeing how he operated was like so fucking cool and inspiring. And he was in the Navy. And so I love talent representation, right? And so I get a call, and my boy Giacomo, fucking my brother, excuse my language. I don't know if I can swear here, just bleep it out.
Too late now, babe.
Is that too late now, baby? He calls me up. He's like, hey, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, man, I just passed the bar, trying to look for some legal job. I might go, get an MBA. I just don't know. He's like, well, the CEO of this company, this management company that managed Mr. Beast, he's looking for like a right-hand dude to kind of handle his management side of the business, run day-to-day on Mr. Beast, and essentially, kind of build in, their training program for coordinators, assistants, all this stuff, right? It was a newer company. I think I was employee 23, and they had a labs business to incubate products with creators, and then they had a venture fund. And I was like, well, that sounds fucking interesting. And so I was like, Mr. Beast, he goes, Nick, is your goal in life not to just be the negotiator, just negotiate the biggest deals on the planet? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I know it's YouTube, but I'm telling you, this is no joke. And I was like, all right, I'll give it 6 months. I'll take the offer. I'll move out to Austin, Texas. I'll do 6 months. If we all love each other and I'm just digging this, I'll stay and we'll figure it out. But hey, no harm, no foul. And, I accepted the offer contingent on me being a manager in 6 months. But I'd help on and help this guy, the CEO of the company, manage his biggest creator. So that's when I was in Greenville once a week, every month or two, and just really diving into the business. I mean, everything from negotiating to like, so Mr. Beast did this Squid Game video, right? It was like the first video to hit 100 million. It's got like 430 million views right now. Well, I negotiated that brand deal. It took me about 6 months, and it was, well into the 2 point something millions, biggest brand deal in YouTube history. And it was so cool. I get to the management company. I know shit about YouTube, right? But when you start working for like the Michael Jordan of YouTube, you learn how to do a jump shot. You learn how to dribble. You learn the economics of the players and the game and everything. And so I just put my lawyer hat on and my talent rep hat on, and I just went head first. And so anyways, I got flagged by Giacomo, Mr. Ballin or John, my like first month in. Cause I was like, right when I got there, I was like, all right, I'm going to manage this guy and this team. And I'm going to find my client, right? I'm going to find that dude that I'm like passionate about the content. Cause YouTube's a bunch of kid content, gaming content, personally, I would watch the news and I would learn how to change a starter. So like, what kind of content creator would I be interested in, right?
Yeah.
He flags this dude who's like blowing up on TikTok, just started a YouTube channel about a year prior, had about 2 million subs on it, I think. Now we're at 7.5 million. I think he maybe had 2.5 million. But he's doing millions of views per video, doing a video a week. And the dude was a Navy SEAL. And Jock's like, listen, dude, we've been trying to sign him for months. And he's like, not having it. He's a former Navy SEAL. He's a father of 3. He's making YouTube videos from his phone in his basement. What is a manager to him, right? Like that,
right.
It's not a common sense type thing. And I was like, well, first off, I look at the field. I'm like, there's 4 managers of the company. I'm like, none of them are going to be able to manage this guy. Like they're just, if I'm a combat vet, I'm a little fucked up, right? Let's just be real. Like you operate different, right? So I'm like, this dude's a former Navy SEAL. Like if anyone's going to be able to manage this guy and have that, be able to have you got to love your clients. It's not about having a client and just doing a deal or two. You have to love your client to be the best manager, agent, representative. And I learned that from Brand. And so I hit up John, email. I was like, guys, you have his email, right? They failed to sign him for like 8 months. I was like, watch this. I draft up an email in the subject line. It was like, combat veteran, love your content. In the body, it was like, hey man, like, I know you don't want management. That's not what I'm here for, but heads up, I'm a combat vet. I'm also an attorney, entertainment lawyer, and I run day-to-day on Mr. Beast. And YouTubers know YouTubers. So right away, he's like, all right, well, this dude's probably credible enough. He ain't an idiot. He's an attorney, so he's got to have some mind. He's got to be some level of intelligence. And by the way, John is the most intelligent guy. His ability to like understand people and communication and this just it's so fascinating. So anyways, no bullshit, sent him an email and I was like, listen dude, not trying to sign you, just putting my friend hat out there. Not sure if you have anyone in your camp or on your team, but I could imagine you're probably in a place where you just don't know what's happening. You're like, you can tell stories. You're the most interesting, fascinating, best storyteller I've ever seen. You just get immersed in this stuff. But I don't know if where you are in the business. So long story short, get him on a call. Right. And I'm so excited. I'm like, yeah. And we get on the call and he no shows. And I'm like, oh man. I was like, yeah, I was like, that's it. That was the chance,
Uh-huh.
And so I sent him an email a couple days later. Hey man, dude, no stress. Seriously, no stress. I'm a huge fan of your stuff, man. You're a vet. I'm a vet. And it's been my passion since I got into Hollywood to work with veterans. My first client I ever had was Nate Boyer, who's a former Green Beret, played for the Seahawks, walk on, his story. Do you know Nate Boyer?
Vaguely, but not deeply.
So incredible. He's a brother of mine. So that was my first client in the business, So I love working with veterans, man. I'm a huge veteran advocate. I've shown and proved it every chance I get. And we have a veteran at the company too. But anyways, long story short, he hits me back up. He's like, dude, shit, I'm so sorry. Flooded. But can you get on now? And I'm like, a little nervous. I'm like, all right. So I was like, yes. So we get on the call and we're talking and he just kind of got to a point, maybe about 10, 15 minutes in. He's just like, I'm just going to be real with you guys. I don't know what is happening right now. I don't know how to understand what's happening other than he's like, I'm like doing what I'm doing instinctually. My channel's blowing up. I'm like skyrocketing here.
Yeah.
All this money's coming in, all this he's like deals are coming in. I don't know what to do. Thank God this dude is so fucking smart. He's like, me and my wife have this thing, Nick, that if we don't know what to do, we do nothing unless we can make an honest decision on what to do. So fortunately, he didn't have any crazy deals or crazy people in his life, like manipulating him, like his view of the business. Blank canvas, clean kitchen. And I was like, listen, man, why don't we do this? I'm not going to ask you to sign. Why don't I just help you out? Like, what are the things you need help with? And I would love to just help you out. And he's like, listen, man, I got a couple things here, and I got kind of some personal stuff. I go, pull me up, be like, dude, I bought a tractor, driver from Kansas to Kentucky, and be like, I would say where and when. Like it doesn't matter what the ask is, and it doesn't have to be something you make money from. Being a manager is just, you gotta love your client, man. So he's, like my baby, right? Like when we first started working, he was so new, and I was so new, and we grew together in this business. And like, beautiful. I had to, and so that's how it got to be. So anyways, about 2 months in, I'm helping him, not asking for nothing, and I'm not promising shit. I'm just helping him. He goes, and I'm running point on Jimmy, Mr. Beast, and I'm running out to Greenville, and I'm closing these deals, and I'm done this. I think our first deal I brought him, first brand deal he ever did was like $5,000. Dude, you cannot, like, So first deal I brought like $150,000. He was like, "Is this real?" Yes. He's like, "Do you want to be my manager?" I go, "Hell yeah, man." and then we just started working together, man. So it was so cool, and it was nice because like I had the ability to help him and be helpful, and I was learning so much as a manager for Jimmy that like it was just like perfect place, perfect, like, right. It was just the world's, like, everything came together, and that's how we started, man.
What do you think resonates with people so well or so much with his channel? Like, what makes him such a great storyteller?
Dude, he has this ungodly gift to just know how to communicate with people. And as a storyteller, you're not just going like, all right, Sarah went into the kitchen and then there was a knife and then something happened and then she died. Like, storytelling is an art form, right? Like, anyone can grab a piece of pen and start sketching, or grab a paintbrush and start painting, right? But like, Basquiat's Basquiat, and that's just how it is, right? So there's like that God-given gift, but there's also like, he grew up in a family of storytellers, right? Right? Like, when he was a kid, his dad, they grew up out in Boston, like just south of Boston, out in Quincy. And his dad, have you seen the movie Spotlight with Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Okay. So that Spotlight team at the Boston Globe, right? Mm-hmm. Is based on John's dad, Scott Allen.
God.
So Pulitzer Prizer, and his mother, Jessie, she's like my mom now. She writes for the podcast. She's written almost every episode. She is so incredible. She works so hard. She's like a world-class librarian. So like, and then his sister, Evan, who's our producer now, 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner for the Boston Globe, is like as smart as John, and just the most personal, bubbly, like hardcore person too. Like, I would not want to cross her. Like, she can make decisions and like show love and compassion like anyone else. And so he just grew up in this family, and then he just had a passion for telling stories. He's a kid out there, and some people just tell a good story, but what resonates with his audience is the fact that like the due diligence into the stories, the sourcing, the citing, the structuring of the story. So if we go into like the nuts and bolts of the actual story, extremely world-class research. The structure of the story is so intricately placed with fact and story. So let's just say out of 100% of a story that's in the news, right? Probably 60% of it is like John's telling the story, right? When you listen to him and you watch his videos, you listen to him on the podcast. Everyone go listen to the Mr. Ballin podcast, only available on Amazon Music. Plug. That's it. And so you just feel like he's there. He was there. And like the person who's no longer here with us, we don't sensationalize the death or the victim or the crime. It's like we get letters all the time from families that are like, or where we will reach out specifically on sometimes and be like, we're going to tell a story about, your daughter or this. And they're just like, how you did it was so beautiful. Like, thank you. Right. And he's just such a showman. He's so good. So anyways, all of that combined
Right.
creates this, like, he's just like the most iconic storyteller over time right now.
What about the content of the stories
Yeah.
itself? Like, it's a very specific kind of story,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. So we go through a ton of topic finding, right?
Yeah.
It could be a great topic, but the sources are blah, or the storyline, because you got to have character development in story, right? You just can't. I mean, you're a filmmaker, right? You're just gonna, unless you're just filming a bunch of penguins. But even that, like, dude, you go and you watch Planet Earth, like you're watching a documentary, but it's a story. You know, you're watching a cheetah 1 minute, a penguin the next, and then all of a sudden it sets the cheetah up with the cubs and all this crazy stuff. It don't matter. Storytelling is storytelling. And he just has a way in which he implements structure, you know, twists, turns, red herrings, character development. You feel for the character. Don't sensationalize the death, so you don't feel dirty after, right? You're either scared to shit because it was a strange, dark, mysterious story. They're like an unexplained death or you know, phenomena, like weird phenomena or ghost stories or whatever, right? True crime, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end on the reveal, you don't start with the reveal because you already gave the ending. Like, you know, in a story, you to the ending, and then the story's done. You don't continue to go and tell more about the story. Doubt, no one cares. Get in and get out, right? So he just has, and it's funny when we started training writers, and I was like, John, we got to train writers, man. You're gonna burn the hell out. He's like, yeah. He's like, but I don't know how. I was like, fuck. All right, so because he's just so instinctually good that it's hard to articulate exactly. Yes. But then when Evan came on, she is so good at like figuring out how he did it, creating the proper training and testing manuals. And just like now we have a writer we hired, we're testing another, we call it Writers Boot Camp. Go figure, we're military. And then we're constantly testing other writers in audio and in video. So podcasts, YouTube, etc.
So both podcasts and YouTube have been out now for, a long time. I mean, YouTube was what, 2005 or 6? So shit, that's going on 20 years, which is wild to say.
It's not wild.
So I think a lot of people might, especially with the rise of TikTok and other platforms, might be like, oh, they're oversaturated. Oh, you know, I don't know where, like if they're beginning, right? Let's bring it back. You know, what is so powerful about both of those platforms where you all have had success?
Yes.
And is there still room for someone to start today and leverage them to kind of achieve the success that they want, the type of success that you all have had?
100%. I think about this every day, right? It's like, you know, you have to adapt or die, right? That's another phrase I like to use, right? So we're constantly just paying attention to this stuff. So a little anecdote. So we get ready to launch this podcast, right? This was back February before last, right? We've been a podcast for about a year, a little over a year. We started it on Valentine's Day. It was going to be the week before, but we just weren't just right for it because we just were working on these 2 little final episodes to launch. And it was like, John and I are hardcore. We're like, we set a goal and we're going to hit it. We're like, February 7th, we're going live. It's like February 5th, and we're just like, we need another week, but it's going to have to be on a Monday. And it's like, but it's Valentine's Day. I was like, let's just make, you know, him and I we're like, yeah, but we said we're going to do it, so let's do it. So we just called it Valentine's Day. We made up our own little holiday just to promote, you know, true crime and strange, dark, mysterious on a Valentine's Day. You know, some couples like to do, you know, they like, let's go watch, you know, this together or whatever. And so we didn't care. But it was funny because we started to talk about doing the podcast. I signed him in October 2021. That December, we were like, all right, dude, we're going into the next year. So I was like, dude, you were a podcaster that just hadn't done a podcast yet. If you close your eyes and listen to his YouTube video, might as well be a damn podcast, right? Yeah. So I was so as a manager, I was like, that's the most logical next step. Plus, that vertical, you know, is prime for storytelling because we are storytellers. We're not podcasters. We're not YouTubers. We're storytellers, right? So what are the verticals that storytelling just fits? And we're like audio. So, I was still at the management company, and John and I were there too, and everyone had their freaking 2 cents, man. Everyone's like, "Oh, dude, frankly, John and I had never listened to a podcast. I had maybe listened to Joe Rogan once, right? I knew nothing of podcasting, but I put my lawyer hat on, and I'm like, what's this learn? So I hit up everybody who I knew, who knew anybody about podcasting, and I was like, what do I need to know? What do I not know? What do you like? And I just took about 100 calls, drafted a playbook for him and I, both for the marketing advertising side, like the pre-launch promotion. Let's get the old. How are we going to promote it across the entire flywheel from YouTube long form, shorts, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram Shorts, Facebook, Snapchat, right? How do we use our 20 plus million reach to launch this new show? And so everybody and their mom was like, it should be host and co-host. It should be video with the guests and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's so freaking one dimensional. I was like, Johnny, what do you want to do? He's like, dude, I'm a narrative storyteller. I go, well, that's what the people want. And I go, but here's the kicker. On YouTube, we're strange, dark, mysterious. For every 6 videos, we do a true crime one. So we're about 20% true crime on YouTube. We like it strange, dark, mysterious, right? And so on the podcast, I was like, the vertical, the category that's popular, obviously out of comedy and news, is true crime. So it's like, we got to be true crime focused. And we won't get heat for it, right? We do a ton of true crime on YouTube. Everyone's like, where's the strange, dark, and mysterious? There's uproar. So because John's a man of the people. He loves his community.
Yeah.
He's so successful as a storyteller because he cares. He lets people into his life. He speaks to them. Before we launched the Amazon deal, he's like, okay, they're doing this huge press release, and the podcast was only going to be exclusive on Amazon Music instead of worldwide on Spotify. He's like, but I want to tell my audience, my community first. And of course, all the PR team, sorry, Jacqueline, everyone's like, yeah, that's going to ruin it. And the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, they're not going to want to release it. And I was like, we don't care. Get us a 20-minute window. And our PR team did it, along with the UTA PR team. And they're like, listen, 15 minutes before we launch this article, y'all can do a personalized video and upload it on YouTube Shorts and tell your audience exactly how the deal is going to work, right? So people don't feel like they're left in the dust, right? And that's the missing key for community. So let's go back. We go to launch the podcast, and we're like, it's going to be John's YouTube channel, narrative storytelling, but audio only and true crime focused. And we just sent it. We did our full due diligence. We got enough information and knowledge to launch it. Everybody on the planet would have been like, why are you doing a true crime show? There's Crime Junkie, Morbid, My Favorite Murder. There's a million true crime shows. Maybe 30% of the top 20 on like Spotify and Amazon or whatever and Apple are true crime shows. So like, to go to your question, how in a saturated market are you going to be successful? And it goes back to one of my closest mentors, Kevin Morris, who's actually Matthew McConaughey's attorney. He would always say this, and he also is the lawyer for the South Park guys, Trey Parker, my son. He was like, listen, content's king. He's like, content quality, no matter what, above all, will succeed. Focus on that. We happen to have had a platform to launch, right? That flywheel that we had been creating. So that's where the success for the launch came. But once the launch, it's a single host narrative true crime podcast. Sprinkles of true crime, sprinkles of strange, dark, mysterious. Crime Junkie, it's a talkie. It's like, they're giving opinions on things. I love Ashley Flowers. I'm a huge fan. Morbid, it's 2 girls, Ash and Lena, talking about, but and I love all of their shows, and I want everybody to win. We just want to win more, right? And so we're just like, it's a saturated market. Everyone's going to call us, idiots. Let's just stick to our guns, dude.
Yeah, but isn't it so much, because I work with a lot of clients and talk about this a lot in my content, like, isn't it so much about your or his in this, both yours, approach, your specific approach to the medium, to the vertical, to the content, right? I mean, and especially with him having such a personality like he does, there is room for all, I think, because
Yes.
you know, if you're not doing it differently than your competitor, something's wrong
Yes.
anyway, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Yes. That's the key. That's the key. If
But
we
so many
tried,
people try to emulate and copy and don't think like, well, what does a Rain Bennett show sound like versus Mr. Ballin show, right?
yes, that is the key. So to answer your question, finally, long story long, yes, there is room in a saturated market. You just got to find your edge. You got to be a degree or two off, and you got to have conviction in your product and what you're doing, and you got to just send it, right? And a lot of people just they get swayed by the wind a little too much, and they don't quite have 100% conviction. I'm gonna say we have a player's advantage. John and I both look at each other in absolute trust and
Yeah.
conviction with our decision making. So when he has a thought and opinion, I will give, and if he wants it, I will give my thoughts and opinion to that. But most of the time, I'm like, I'm your manager. My job is to promote you and help you do what you want to do. It's not my job to change you, to curate your stuff. I trust his judgment every day, and he trusts mine every day. I run the business. He runs the content. I can't do what he does. He can't. He can't. Hell no, don't want to do what I do. He's like, Nick, I can't. I hate taking calls, and you take 10 calls a day. How are you alive? He's like, I take 2 a week, and I just am drained. I'm like, yeah, because dude, he's such a brilliant creator and artist that like he needs to be in that happy space, and that's like me as his manager. I my position as manager is to take all the stress away, solve every problem I can, help build a team around him, so to prevent burnout and to help him, help him grow. He's like, listen, dude, YouTube's feeling like a job. What's the next thing? I'm like, dude, podcast, YouTube on autopilot and get you time back because we can't spread you too thin. You burn out, the whole thing, house of cards collapses.
Yeah.
So you got to be smart. You got to trust your team. But yeah, so there's plenty of room to grow in the audio space. Same with YouTube. YouTube's so interesting because it's a lot of algorithmic kind of success, right? And there's ebbs and flows, of course. There's changes in viewing habits. Hey, we're going into the summer. People aren't in school, but are they going to be sitting and watching TV? Or are they going to be outside playing? Like all these things factor in. Well, are you going to upload on a holiday weekend? Are you going to upload during spring break? Like all these things are so strategic and operating that like plain and simple, easiest way to get into like the creator space, digital space, get on short form first, get on TikTok or YouTube shorts, because your chances of going viral there outweighs going viral on a YouTube video upload 10 times out of 10. Right. And then you build and you can even do it simultaneously. You can start that YouTube channel and you can take those and start building like a TikTok short form, sub 1 minute content on shorts and TikTok. Figure out a way to just continue to maybe build a little mini flywheel where people find you on TikTok. You're promoting that you have a YouTube channel, so they go to YouTube. They find you on YouTube. They find out you have a YouTube Shorts channel, and you just the web and your net is just as wide as you can cast it. That's my advice, man.
So you've kind of alluded to this a couple of times, and especially when you were talking about John's approach to wanting to make the announcement himself to his community versus kind of like the more traditional, conventional path of going to these media outlets, etc. You also kind of touched on it when you mentioned first finding out about Mr. Beast, and you're like, I don't know what a Mr. Beast is. I saw
love
TikTok,
you, Jimmy. Love you, Jimmy.
Yeah, love you, Jimmy. I saw a TikTok the other day that talked about how we are moving or have moved from this like influencer economy of 2015 to now to this creator economy, and this is what you've talked about a little bit here recently. Can you talk, and this is a big kind of broad question, but can you talk to me a little bit about that in terms of like where are we now and where do you think it will go? Like just explain to me what's going on now and the power dynamics, the white space and opportunity for a creator at this point in 2023.
Yeah, it's let's go back to media as a whole, right? Like media first started in like the talkies, right? The black and white.
You're speaking my language, yeah.
Right. And then the evolution of film, and then television, and then sitcoms, and then non-scripted television, all these things that kind of spear out. But not until recently, I would say, legitimately, Jimmy and the boys over on the Beast team. By the way, I am their number one fan. James Warren, the CEO, I love him to death. Mark Hudspeth, the president. I mean, you got Rohan on the sub 1 minute content. You got Ali and Alex and all these guys on the producer. They move mountains as what would take in Hollywood years, right? Let's just be straight up. So to that point, and I came from traditional Hollywood, right? I was in talent agencies. I want to rep actors and actors and athletes, right? Well, I started to see where like influencers were coming in. So when I was in the commercials endorsement space, you would have like, all right, The Rock would do a deal with Voss Water, and Charlize Theron would do a deal with Chanel for perfume. Well, there started to be the influencer space that was seeping in, but it was like influencers. It was like you're popular because you're popular. It's Kardashian effect, right? Like, but what is and they've all sprouted and grown into these mega minds. However, it was just like the Paris Hilton stuff. They're popular because they're popular. Like that's the influencer space, right?
Right.
And it's like I'm on Instagram, I take pictures, and I'm this. There wasn't a lot of content being generated. It was like personality to be a personality, and people wanting to be a personality versus being a creator. And it was funny because when I worked for this guy, and my first experience with and by the way, I don't have social media. I have no Instagram. I have no Facebook. I have a Twitter I do not use. I have LinkedIn, but I'm in the space, which is funny. But we worked with a guy named LaJuan James, who's like an Instagrammer who would create this sketch comedy for like Hispanic culture. And it was fascinating. But I remember distinctly because YouTube wasn't quite there in the creator space, and you had this influencer creator space, YouTube, Instagram, right? And I remember when we were talking about like, hey dude, we need to get you on YouTube, right? And there was just this like this is my space. Like I'm an influencer. I need to be on Instagram. But he was creating content like YouTube content and like TikTok content, but TikTok wasn't big, obviously, because that was 19, right? And I got in at 2018 in the commercials department. So it was really YouTube. And if you didn't start on YouTube, you didn't move into YouTube. You either started on YouTube like Jimmy, right, 10 years ago, or you started on Instagram, right? And then you were either an influencer or a creator. And now there's this cross-pollination. Old school Hollywood, there's too many gatekeepers. You want to be an actor, got to go Hollywood, bust tables, do acting gigs, try to get in. Dude, you can become talent and show your talent as a creator on your own. You upload your own YouTube video. You get your own boy to do your filming. You edit yourself. You write. Dude, John was doing everything. He was topic finding, researching, writing, filming, editing, and producing, posting all on his iPhone, right? In his basement as a one-man band. That is possible. You can't do that in traditional Hollywood. But it's funny because unlike traditional Hollywood, you see Will Smith in once a year in a movie, twice a year in a movie. What kind of influence does he have other than being an actor and having that fan base? Well, Jimmy puts a video out once a month, every 2 months. He's got a gaming channel, reacts channel, philanthropy channel, main channel. You see Jimmy every day of the week. Yeah. That's influence. And you ain't the gatekeepers of getting it's just there's the access and the ability to be found and show your skills as a creator is only going to go deeper and take over more of the pie. If we think this is media, it was probably 90-10 traditional, and the rest was kind of the digital influencer. It's 50-50 now, baby. And I think it's only going to go stronger, right? And so I think anyone who's interested needs to do it. Do it now or never do it, right?
Absolutely.
And then do shit that you're passionate about, and you will love every day that you're doing it. You do stuff you're not interested in. You do stuff because you think it's, oh, this is trending. Let me go do this. Like, no, man, do what's passionate for you and be the best you can be, and just
And
So
then just to tie it back full circle, it'll be like climbing that roller coaster. You'll tick 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 for a long time, building,
yes,
carving your own path. But at some point, folks, it will start to get to that
you,
crest,
you
and don't
you'll break and start hitting momentum. And once
exactly.
momentum hits, and this is what John and I've been riding, man. Momentum, there's nothing more powerful than momentum, and momentum will ebb and flow. But once you get in flow, you have to seize that moment, and you have to be diligent and smart about it, because the earlier you're on in that growth, every decision, like, so Jen Sargent is a mentor and friend of mine. She's a CEO of Wondery. I love her to death. She's blessed me with doing a once a month CEO meeting. I'm a new CEO.
Right.
And she's like, man, listen, dude, when you first start out, she's built multiple businesses. She's like, every decision feels like a whiplash thing. If it's the bad call, it'll destroy the business. That's how it feels. So when you start riding momentum and you're making these decisions and you're like, growth. All right, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, but you're still growing, and you keep that momentum with you. It is weird how things start to go and fold into each other. You got to be sharp, dude. One last thing from a mentor of mine. So Steven Levinson is Mark Wahlberg's manager and partner. I used to work with him, spend time with him at the agency, because he would do a lot of stuff with veterans. I started a veteran hiring committee at the agency. So we had about 8 veterans in Hollywood that I started from nothing.
Nice.
So we would talk, and he said this once, and I never forgot it. He goes, listen, man, the longer you stay in the business, the more opportunity will come. You just have to be able to see it and go for it. But don't worry about missing one, because you'll continue to have those opportunities. But you just got to be smart enough to see it, and you got to pull the trigger on it. But he's like, that's why when I had gotten fired at the agency, it wasn't like my life was over. It was like that path just wasn't the one. And I wasn't in a position to be on a right path. And I always remember that, man. Just if you stay in the business, you stay in the game, you get on, you start creating, and you just keep going, opportunities will come, and you got to seize them.
Yeah, because that's focusing on building a catalog and not just one hit, right? So
Yeah.
I love that approach. I think it's a perfect place to end today, man. Thank you, brother. I mean, it's a real pleasure to meet you. I mean, I'm super proud of y'all for the success
Same.
you're having. You deserve every bit of it, but I'm excited to see what comes next, man. I mean, I can tell that you've learned so much in the past couple of years,
Yeah.
and like you've got all this space now in front of you. The momentum is there. I'm really pumped for you, man.
We got a lot of exciting stuff coming this year. The end of the year, we got new shows in development for audio. We're building another podcast in like 6 months or next year, and I cannot wait to talk about some of the stuff we're
We
doing.
absolutely will.
Cool, dude.
All right,
It was an honor,
hey,
brother.
man, have
Thank
a good
you.
day.
All right, peace.
That means a lot, man. I appreciate it.